That which causes us trials shall yield us triumph, and that which makes our hearts ache shall fill us with gladness. For the only true happiness is to learn, to advance, and to improve. None of this could happen without rejecting error, ignorance, and imperfection. We must pass out of the darkness to reach the light. Primarch Fulgrim, attainment of perfection. Fulgrim, known as the Phoenician before the Horus heresy, is the Primarch of the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion. He was distinguished by his silvery white hair and an intense vanity, dedicating his life to the pursuit of perfection in all aspects, physical, mental, and spiritual. Currently, Fulgrim is a four-armed serpentine demon prince of Slaanesh, believed to dwell on a demon world within the Eye of Terror. Few are aware, including most of his Chaos Space Marines, that Fulgrim felt remorse for his corruption by the ruinous powers during the drop site massacre on Istvan V at the onset of the Horus heresy nearly 10 millennia ago. During a brief period of mental vulnerability, a greater demon of Slaanesh residing within the blade of the lair, an artifact Fulgrim possessed at the time, took advantage and possessed his body. Fulgrim, however, used this spiritual imprisonment to further explore Chaos's power and eventually managed to imprison the demon, regaining control of his body. Emerging from this ordeal, Fulgrim became even more devoted to the path of sensation offered by Slaanesh and Chaos. By the end of the Horus heresy, his dedication earned him the rank of Demon Prince of the God of Excess. His current whereabouts are unknown to both the Imperium and most heretic Astartes of the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion, who continue to wander the galaxy in search of pleasure and demonic ascension. Since the opening of the Great Rift in the Era Indomitus, rumors and unverified reports suggest that Fulgrim has become active across the galaxy again. Like all the Primarchs, Fulgrim was teleported from Terra as an infant through a warp rift created by the Chaos Gods, who sought to prevent or corrupt the coming age of the Imperium to ensure their continued dominance and existence. After being snatched from the Emperor's gene laboratory deep beneath the Himalayan mountains on Terra, Fulgrim's gestation capsule landed on Kimos, a resource-poor mining world. Kimos, a bleak planet bathed in the light of a small binary star and encased in a thick nebula dust cloud, was perpetually shrouded in twilight. Settled by humanity during the dark age of technology as a mining world, Kimos was isolated from its neighbours by warp storms during the Age of Strife. The planet's resources dwindled, leading to severe food shortages despite strict rationing and improvised solutions. The Kimosians' survival depended on fortress factories to provide necessary resources, and the entire population worked tirelessly in vapor mines and synthesizers. With no time for art or leisure, Kimos relied on intermittent interstellar trade for food, but continuous warp storms made trade difficult, condemning the planet to gradual decline. Scouts from the fortress factory of Calix's planetary police force, the Caretakers, discovered Fulgrim's gestation capsule after it crash-landed on Kimos. Impressed by the infant's beauty, they pleaded with Calix's executives to spare his life, as orphans were typically killed to conserve resources. Fulgrim was spared and entrusted to one of the rescuers, a caretaker who raised him as his own. Named after a Kimosian deity, Fulgrim soon became a legendary figure on Kimos. At half the age when most Kimosians began work, he demonstrated remarkable ability as a labourer, intuitively understanding and improving Kimosian mining technology. By the age of 15 Terran years, Fulgrim rose from labourer to executive of the Calix Fortress factory. As a leader, Fulgrim was aware of the dire situation facing Calix and other Kimosian settlements due to declining technology and resources. Under his guidance, teams of engineers ventured far from Calix, reclaiming and repairing ancient mining outposts that had lain dormant since before the Age of Strife. This revitalized mining operations, leading to unprecedented resource surpluses and enabling Kimos to purchase food and materials from interstellar traders. Fulgrim, now the planetary leader, also fostered the revival of Kimosian art and culture, aspects of life that had long been sacrificed to the planet's resource shortages and relentless labor. Soon after this significant victory, the isolation of Kimos came to an end in the year 830 of the 30th millennium. A squadron of Stormbird dropships, heavily armoured and battle-worn, descended from the ever-twilight sky, adorned with the imperial aquila, the emblem of the Emperor of Mankind. The sight of the aquila stirred Fulgrim's memories. Though Chemos lacked a substantial military force, the landing zone of the Stormbirds was surrounded by the caretakers, the planetary police force of the fortress factories. Fulgrim instructed the caretakers to greet the newcomers and escort them to Kallax. In his private chambers, Fulgrim encountered these armoured warriors from the stars, embodying a civilization that epitomized the culture and sophistication Fulgrim yearned to restore to Chemos. As the Emperor himself stepped forward from among the Astartes, Fulgrim, overwhelmed by reverence, knelt before his Gene-Father and offered his sword in pledge. At that moment, Fulgrim vowed to dedicate himself wholeheartedly to the service of the Emperor and the Imperium of Man. The Emperor enlightened his son about Terra and the great crusade he had launched to unite the scattered worlds of humanity under a single banner, to prevent the extinction of mankind by the galaxy's hostile forces, and to assert humanity's rightful place as the dominant species in the Milky Way. Imperial records confirm that the meeting between Fulgrim and the Emperor occurred in the year 830 of the 30th millennium, which aligns with the completion of Fulgrim's immense flagship, the battle barge known as the Pride of the Emperor by the Mechanicum of Mars, approximately 160 standard years before the onset of the Horus heresy in the latter part of the 30th millennium. Fulgrim returned to Terra with the Emperor to see the Third Legion of Space Marines created from his own genetic material. However, he was dismayed to discover that an accident had destroyed most of the gene seed intended for the Third Legion, making the replacement process slow and arduous. Addressing the mere 200 Astartes of the Third Legion, Fulgrim's inspiring speech earned the Legion the name Emperor's Children from the Emperor himself. It was decreed that only they would bear the imperial aquila, the double-headed eagle of the Emperor, on their power armor's ceramite chestplates. Driven by the honor bestowed upon them, Fulgrim and the Emperor's children sought to embody the Emperor's vision of perfection and his cultural ideals. This obsession with perfection permeated their military strategies, artistic expressions, and attention to aesthetics, setting them apart from other Astartes. Fulgrim personified this quest for physical beauty and excellence. With his long silver hair cascading down his back, expressive eyes, and a melodious voice that welcomed those seeking his guidance. His power armor was crafted to the highest standards of imperial technology, adorned in the purple and gold colors chosen for his legion, and he often wore elaborately embroidered high-collared cloaks over it. The bond between the Primarchs Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, known as the Phoenician and the Gorgon, respectively, was well recognized throughout the Imperium during the Great Crusade. Their immediate connection was evident upon their first encounter. This meeting took place on Terra, beneath Mount Narodnia, the Ural's greatest forge. Ferrus Manus was engaged with the Forge Masters, who had once served the Terrawat clan during the Unification Wars, showcasing his incredible skills and the unique powers of his liquid metal hands. Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's Children and leader of the Third Legion, along with his elite Phoenix Guard, arrived at the Forge complex. Although they had not yet met, both Primarchs felt a profound connection through their shared understanding of alchemy and science. The artisans at the Forge, awestruck and intimidated, bowed before the two powerful beings, fearing a potential confrontation. Ferrus Manus later recounted to the Astartes of the 10th Legion that Fulgrim had claimed his intent to forge the most perfect weapon ever created for the Great Crusade. Ferrus Manus, unable to ignore such a bold assertion, laughed and challenged Fulgrim, asserting that his own metal hands were superior to Fulgrim's. Accepting the challenge with dignity, the two Primarchs stripped to the waist and laboured tirelessly for weeks, their forge echoing with the clamour of hammers, the hiss of cooling metal, and their competitive banter. After 3 months of relentless effort, each had crafted a remarkable weapon. Fulgrim's creation, Forgebreaker, was a stunning warhammer capable of demolishing mountains with a single strike. Ferrus Manus produced Fireblade, a golden sword that eternally burned with the forge's fire. Each Primarch acknowledged the excellence of the other's weapon. Fulgrim admired the sword, likening it to the blade of the legendary hero Nuada Silverhand, while Ferrus Manus believed only thunder gods of Nordic legend could wield such a warhammer. They exchanged their creations, solidifying their eternal friendship through their craftsmanship. Forgebreaker was a colossal weapon, its ebony haft adorned with gold and silver threads forming a lightning bolt, and its head shaped like a mighty eagle, with its barbed beak as the striking face and its wings as the claw. The hammer radiated immense power, embodying not just skill but also love, honor, loyalty, and friendship, making it legendary. Ferrus Manus was often called the Gorgon, a name some on Terra linked to an ancient Olympian hegemony legend about a creature whose gaze could turn men to stone. Although some might find the name disrespectful for a Primarch, those close to Ferrus Manus believed he enjoyed it. The nickname originated from Fulgrim's jest after their meeting. Unlike Fulgrim, who had a deep appreciation for art and culture, Ferrus Manus had little interest in such pursuits. After their meeting at Mount Narodnia, they returned to the Imperial Palace, where Sanguinius of the Blood Angels had arrived with gifts for the Emperor, including exquisite statues, priceless gemstones, and wondrous artifacts from Baal. While Fulgrim was captivated by these treasures, Ferrus Manus dismissed them as distractions from their mission to reclaim the galaxy. Fulgrim, amused, dubbed Ferrus a terrible Gorgon, suggesting that without valuing beauty they would never truly appreciate the stars they aimed to restore for their father. The name stuck, and Ferrus Manus was forever known as the Gorgon. "My brothers, leave behind the betrayal of worlds broken to the wheel, scars of fire and blood carved across the face of the galaxy. I know that there is a better way, a more efficient way, and together you and I will prove it. We will bring Byzus into compliance, but not through fire and blood. 6 blades, and 6 blades alone will I carry into this battle." Primarch Fulgrim, before the compliance campaign of 28. From the outset, Fulgrim was eager to make a significant impact on the Great Crusade, much like his fellow Primarchs. However, due to the relatively small size of his legion, the Emperor's children were initially placed under the command of Primarch Horus and fought alongside his Lunar Wolves Legion. During their joint campaigns to conquer and pacify the eastern fringe of the galaxy in the Ultima Segmentum, Horus and Fulgrim developed a close personal bond. Over the course of several Terran decades, the ranks of the Emperor's children grew as new Astartes were recruited from Terra and Fulgrim's homeworld of Kamos, where the Third Legion had established its fortress monastery at the old fortress factory of Kallax. Once the Emperor's children had reached a sufficient size, Fulgrim was given command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet and embarked on his own campaign of conquest, adding numerous worlds to the Emperor's realm. Among these was the advanced Xenos world of Leran, where Fulgrim's fate would be sealed. Leran, designated as 28-3, was the third world brought to Imperial compliance by the 28th Expedition. Unbeknownst to the Third Legion, the Serpentine Lair species were corrupted worshippers of the Chaos god of pleasure, Slaanesh. Although Leran's resource-rich nature would have greatly benefited the Crusade, its inhabitants were hostile and refused to acknowledge the Imperium's manifest destiny. Their resistance was met with force by the Third Legion. The 28th Expeditionary Fleet succeeded in conquering Leran, exterminating its native reptilian inhabitants. Leran was a water world, its continents having sunk beneath the ocean's waves centuries earlier due to the melting of ice caps. The Lair, who had no land and were technologically advanced, had constructed their society on floating coral islands supported by anti-gravity generators. What Fulgrim and his legion did not realize was that the Lair were a civilization corrupted by Slaanesh. The central nexus of their coral islands was a massive temple dedicated to the Prince of Pleasure, housing a potent chaos artifact, a beautifully crafted, single-edged demon blade that was the vessel for a greater demon of Slaanesh. The Lair exhibited signs of Slaaneshi corruption, including a need for extreme sensory stimulation and deriving pleasure from the most intense experiences, including their own deaths. Unaware of the true nature of the danger, Fulgrim ordered an assault to conquer Leyren within a month, eradicating the lair entirely. The Council of Terror had considered a prolonged campaign that might last 10 years, even contemplating making Leyren a protectorate. Fulgrim, however, rejected such ideas, believing that the lair had sealed their fate by rejecting the Emperor's offer. During the final battle, Fulgrim discovered the temple dedicated to Slaanesh, and despite the Imperium's ignorance of chaos, the malign influence of the temple began to corrupt his forces. Upon defeating the temple's defenders, Fulgrim found a circular block of veined black stone at the temple's heart, embedded with a tall silver sword with a gently curved blade and an amethyst gem in the pommel. This sword was not only a potent Slaaneshi artifact, but also the vessel for a greater demon of Slaanesh. After claiming the blade, Fulgrim began to hear the demon's whispers, corrupting his soul toward Slaanesh. He started using the demon blade more frequently than his previous weapon, Fireblade, crafted by his brother Ferrus Manus. Initially, he believed the whispers were his own thoughts, but he eventually realized they were the demon's influence. Persuaded by his brother Horus, who was also corrupted by the ruinous powers, Fulgrim embraced chaos. He found a patron in the Prince of Pleasure, who promised him the ultimate perfection he sought, free from morality and driven by self-obsession. In the later stages of the Great Crusade, the Iron Hands Legion came across the Diasporex, a nomadic fleet-based civilization comprising both humans and Xenos. The Iron Hands, adhering to the imperial truth of the Emperor, extended an invitation to the human members of the Diasporex to disassociate from their alien allies and join the newly established Imperium. However, the Diasporex rejected this offer. Following the rejection, the Iron Hands judged the Diasporex and over the subsequent months launched an effort to annihilate them. The Diasporex, skilled and experienced in naval combat, adeptly avoided key battles and even inflicted significant damage on the Iron Hands' strike cruiser, Ferrum. The 28th Expeditionary Fleet of the Emperor's Children was called in for reinforcements, leading to a combined Imperial strike force of Iron Hands and Emperor's Children engaging the Diasporex in a full-scale assault. Despite being aware of the formidable Imperial fleet pursuing them, the Diasporex chose to remain in the sector instead of relocating to safety. Iron Hands scout ships uncovered the reason for their persistence. The Diasporex utilized concealed solar collector arrays to gather fuel for their ships from a star. Targeting these crucial fuel stations, the two Imperial fleets managed to draw the Diasporex fleet into an open confrontation as the Human-Xenos alliance sought to avoid total destruction. During the ensuing massive naval engagement, Fulgrim's personal gunship, the Firebird, came under severe attack and soon faced grave danger. Ferrus Manus, rushing to aid his beleaguered brother, dispatched his flagship, the battle barge Fist of Iron, to provide crucial support. To salvage his wounded pride, Fulgrim spearheaded a swift boarding action where the Emperor's Children inflicted heavy losses on the Diasporex troops. However, ultimate victory eluded him when one of his subordinate commanders captured the enemy's ship's bridge. In the following solar months, Fulgrim harbored resentment towards Ferrus Manus, unable to grasp the altruism behind Ferrus's actions and the sacrifices made by his own legion. The demon-possessed layer blade that Fulgrim carried continuously clouded his perception, leading him to view Ferrus's actions through a lens of self-aggrandizement rather than recognizing the true heroism of his brother's deed. Fulgrim misinterpreted Ferrus's critical remarks, believing them to be undermining jabs when they were actually intended as light-hearted attempts to temper Fulgrim's arrogance and restore his humility. What Fulgrim saw as Ferrus's prideful boasts and reckless actions were, in reality, acts of bravery, overshadowed by the malevolent influence of chaos that began to corrupt the Phoenician's soul. A warrior is measured by the quality of the foes he defeats. For years we have blunted our blades against lesser species and backwards primitives, but now this war, this glorious cataclysm, It presents us a chance to display for all eternity our perfection in the arena of war against the most formidable foe we shall ever face, our brother legionaries, and for this we humbly thank him, our dear father, whose name we carry. Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, opened Vox address before the Jiran Luxor atrocity. Certain Inquisition members who have examined the fragmented imperial records from this period now believe that the Leyran Demon's Herd began to exert a significant chaos influence over Fulgrim. This influence may have also tainted the forces of the Emperor's Children he had dispatched against the Lair, who had pledged their allegiance to Slaanesh. As Fulgrim grappled with his own corruption, he found himself at the heart of the unfolding events that would lead to the Horus heresy. Fulgrim encountered the esteemed Asuryani Farseer Eldrad Ulthran from Craftworld Ulthwé on the Maiden World of Tarsus. The Farseer warned Fulgrim that Horus had been wounded by the Chaos artifact blade known as the Kinabrak Anathame, wielded by Ogun Temba, the planetary governor of Davin, who had succumbed to the influence of the Plague Lord Nurgle. The wound had given the Chaos gods a foothold in Horus's soul, leading him towards their service as he recovered from the injury inflicted by the Kinabrak blade on the plague-ridden moon of Davin. Fulgrim, deeply offended by these allegations due to his close bond with Horus, reacted with violent anger. His connection with Horus, which was second only to his friendship with Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, clouded his judgment. The demon blade Fulgrim carried further fueled his rage, prompting him to launch an unprovoked and furious attack on Eldrad, his retinue, and the Emperor's Children captains and Phoenix Guard. In the ensuing battle, the Emperor's Children killed the revered Asuryani Wraithlord, Kiraean Goldhelm, and a potent avatar of Cain, forcing the Farseer and his forces to withdraw in sorrow as they realized another Primarch had fallen to chaos. However, they managed to kill all of Fulgrim's elite Phoenix Guard before their departure. Convinced that the Eldari were treacherous and intent on dividing the Imperium with their lies about its leaders, Fulgrim, under the growing influence of the Demon Blade, ordered the 28th Expeditionary Fleet to destroy several beautiful Eldari maiden worlds with devastating virus bombs. While the exact timing of this meeting is not recorded, it is known that Fulgrim soon confronted Horus in person after the Eldari's warning. Fulgrim demanded an explanation for Horus's actions, but Horus, using his considerable charisma, persuaded Fulgrim to join him and the ruinous powers. Fulgrim's respect for Horus allowed chaos to penetrate his heart, eroding his once steadfast loyalty to the Emperor and replacing it with a fervent desire to destroy the one he now believed was hindering humanity's pursuit of the perfection promised by the Chaos gods. In recognition of Horus's trust, he gifted Fulgrim with the Kinabrak Anathame, a potent chaos blade that had nearly killed Horus on Davin's plague moon. Fulgrim was then instructed by Horus to meet with Ferrus Manus aboard his flagship, the battle barge Fist of Iron, in the hope of swaying Ferrus to the side of Horus and the traitor legions. Fulgrim had dispatched most of his legion and the 28th Expeditionary Fleet to join Horus and the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet in the Istvan system, while he and a small force assisted the Iron Hands' 52nd Expeditionary Fleet in retaking Kalinides IV from Orcs. Fulgrim believed he could persuade Ferrus of Horus's cause, given their strong bond. The meeting between the two Primarchs in Ferrus's private chamber aboard the Anvilarium ended in violence. Ferrus, enraged by the idea of betraying the Emperor, attacked Fulgrim with his weapons, using his necrodermis hands to destroy Fulgrim's power sword, Fireblade. The explosion from the destroyed weapon knocked Ferrus out. Fulgrim intended to use his Warhammer, Forgebreaker, to kill Ferrus, but was unable to do so despite the urgings of the Slaaneshi demon within him. After the confrontation, Fulgrim signalled his Phoenix Guard to execute all of Ferrus's bodyguard, the Iron Hands Morlocks Terminators, and nearly killed the Iron Hands' first captain Gabriel Santor. Fulgrim then escaped aboard his personal assault craft, the Firebird, after ordering his flagship, the battle barge Pride of the Emperor, to attack the 52nd Expeditionary Fleet. This surprise assault crippled the fleet. allowing Fulgrim and his forces to flee into the warp to join the rest of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet in the Istvan system. With their allegiance now secured and their course set, the chaos corruption rapidly spread throughout the Third Legion, tainting Fulgrim, his chief lieutenants, and eventually all but a small minority of Emperor's children Astartes, who followed Slanish's dictates rather than remaining loyal to the Emperor. The Third Legion's quest for excellence and perfection had deteriorated into an obsession with hedonism and self-indulgence. Before Horus publicly declared his rebellion against the Emperor, he found a chance to eliminate the loyalist factions within the Astartes legions under his command. The imperial planetary governor of Istvan III, Vardus Praal, had been corrupted by the chaos god Slanesh, whose cultists had been active on the planet even before the Imperium's conquest. Praal declared his secession from the Imperium and began practicing forbidden Slaneshi sorcery. Consequently, the Council of Terror assigned Horus to recapture the world, particularly its capital, Coral City. This mission aligned perfectly with Horus's own plans to overthrow the Emperor. Although the four legions under Horus, Sons of Horus, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children, had already pledged allegiance to Chaos, each still had a significant number of loyalist elements, roughly one-third of each legion. Many of these loyalists were Terran-born space marines who had been directly recruited by the Emperor before reuniting with their Primarchs during the Great Crusade. Under the pretense of quelling a rebellion on Istvan III, Horus gathered his forces in the Istvan system. His strategy involved eliminating all remaining loyalist elements within his legions. After a prolonged bombardment of Istvan III, Horus sent all known loyalist Astartes to the planet under the guise of restoring it to imperial control. At the moment of triumph and the capture of Coral City, the loyalist forces were betrayed when the War Master's orbiting fleet unleashed a barrage of deadly Life-Eater virus bombs. However, loyalist Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children was aboard the strike cruiser Andronius and uncovered the plot to exterminate the loyalist Astartes within the traitor legions. With the help of Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard, who commanded the Death Guard frigate Eisenstein, Tarvitz managed to reach the surface of Istvan III and warn as many loyalist space marines as he could. Those who received the warning took refuge before the virus bombs struck. The civilian population of Istvan III was not spared. 12 billion people perished instantly as the Life-Eater virus dissolved every living thing on the planet. The psychic shock of such massive death momentarily obscured the Astronomicon. Realizing that the virus bombs had not fully eradicated all loyalists, Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, erupted in fury and led 50 companies of World Eaters' traitor marines in a savage assault on the planet. Fueled by their devotion to the blood god Khorne, the World Eaters engaged in a mindless slaughter, ignoring tactics. Although Horus was enraged by Angron's delay, he sought to capitalize on it and reinforced Angron with troops from the Sons of Horus Death Guard and Emperor's Children. Fortunately, a group of loyalists led by Battle Captain Garrow escaped Istvan III aboard the damaged Imperial frigate Eisenstein and headed for Terra to inform the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. On Istvan III, the remaining loyalists, commanded by Captains Tarvitz, Gaviel Loken and Tarik Torgadon from the Sons of Horus, fought valiantly against their traitorous counterparts. Despite initial successes that delayed Horus's plans for 3 months, their cause was ultimately doomed due to a lack of air support and Titan firepower. During the battle, Sons of Horus captains Ezekiel Abaddon and Horus Aximand were dispatched to confront their former Mournival brothers, Loken and Torgadon. Aximand beheaded Torgadon, but Abaddon failed to kill Loken when their building collapsed. Loken survived and witnessed the final orbital bombardment that crushed the Loyalist defense. The Loyalists of the Emperor's Children, led by Captains Saul Tarvitz and Solomon Demeter, also fought bravely. In a twist of fate, Captain Lucius of the 13th Company, driven by jealousy over Tarvitz's command, turned against his former allies. He personally killed many Loyalists, an act that re-earned him a place among the traitors. In the end, the remaining Loyalists, reduced to a few hundred, retreated to their final stronghold. Weary of the prolonged conflict, Horus ordered a final withdrawal and had Coral City bombarded into oblivion from orbit. In the closing days of their great crusade, just before the Horus heresy erupted, the renowned composer Bekwa Kinska of Terra joined the Emperor's Children's 28th Expeditionary Fleet as a remembrancer aboard Fulgrim's battle barge, the pride of the Emperor. Kinska, a disillusioned musician always in search of new and thrilling experiences to inspire her compositions, became a prime target for the corrupting influence of Slaanesh. After travelling with the 28th Expedition's remembrancers to a Slaanesh temple on the Xenos world of Leran, she was profoundly affected by the chaotic corruption there, and became obsessed with creating the ultimate orchestral piece that she believed could capture the sublime sounds she had encountered in the temple. Kinska's magnum opus, a symphony she titled The Maraviglia, was performed for Fulgrim and the assembled Astartes of the Emperor's Children, along with their support personnel in the Remembrancers' Lounge and Theatre, known as La Fenice, aboard the Pride of the Emperor. To replicate the sound she had experienced, Kinska designed new musical instruments with sonic properties that could also be harnessed for destructive purposes, especially by those already tainted by Slaanesh. As the Maraviglia commenced, the cacophony of these instruments acted as a sorcerous ritual, bridging the gap between real space and the warp, allowing the power of Slaanesh to directly influence the audience. The music had effects that ranged from disorienting and stimulating to lethally destructive. The audience, both Astartes and mortal humans, succumbed to chaotic mutations and overwhelming sensations, resulting in an orgy of hedonism and violence. The music summoned 5 lesser demons of Slaanesh known as demonettes, who possessed Kinska and several of her singers, joining in the carnage. During this chaotic performance, some Emperor's Children Astartes left their seats to handle the instruments themselves, discovering that these chaotic tools could unleash waves of destructive sonic power infused with the psychic strength of chaos. These Astartes were the first to become Noise Marines, a new unit of the 3rd Legion called the Cacophony, commanded by First Captain Julius Cassoron. It was during this performance at La Fenice that the Emperor's Children fully committed themselves, both physically and spiritually, to Slaanesh, becoming his most devoted servants. As the Loyalist Salamanders, Raven Guard and Iron Hands legions arrived in the Istvan system to confront Horus and the traitor legions on Istvan V, the Emperor's Children eagerly engaged in the battle. Thousands of drop pods and stormbirds were launched for the deployment. The initial wave, led by Primarch Ferrus Manus, included his own 10th Legion, Vulcan's Salamanders, and Corvus Corax's Raven Guard. Vulcan's forces attacked the left flank of the traitors, while Ferrus Manus, Iron Hand's First Captain Gabriel Santor, and 10 full companies of elite Morlock Terminators surged into the heart of the enemy lines. Simultaneously, Corax's legion struck the right flank. The forces were evenly matched. 30,000 traitor marines faced 40,000 loyalists. Horus, aware of the loyalists' chosen landing zone, positioned his troops to confront them. The Istvan V battlefield turned into a massacre of monumental scale. Betrayed by their own kin, warriors consumed by hatred clashed in a brutal conflict. Titan war engines, walking embodiments of the machine god, ravaged the planet's surface, leaving death in their wake. Blood flowed freely, and the Dark Mechanicum's heretic adepts unleashed twisted technologies from the Oretian technocracy, causing further devastation among the loyalists. The Urgol Depression became a death trap, with hundreds falling every second under the shadow of inevitable demise. The traitor forces managed to hold their ground, but their lines were strained under the initial loyalist assault, teetering on the edge of breaking. The second wave of loyalist Space Marine legions descended upon the northern edge of the Urgol Depression. Hundreds of Stormbirds and Thunderhawks arrived, bringing with them 4 more Astartes legions. However, these reserve legions had secretly pledged themselves to Chaos and Horus's cause. The Night Lords of Conrad Kurz, the Iron Warriors of Perturabo, the Word-Bearers of Lorgar, and the Alpha Legion of Alpharius added their strength to the traitor forces now larger than before. The newly arrived traitor legions prepared for battle unscathed and ready. Although the Iron Hands, Raven Guard and Salamanders had successfully made their combat drop and secured the Urgal depression, it came at a significant cost. Fueled by anger, Ferrus Manus disregarded the advice of Corax and Vulcan, choosing to pursue the fleeing traitors and confront Fulgrim directly. His veteran troops, including most of the 10th Legion's Terminators and Dreadnoughts, followed him. What started as a coordinated assault turned into one of the largest engagements of the Great Crusade, with over 60,000 Astartes warriors clashing on Isstvan V's grim terrain. This battle would be remembered as one of the most epic confrontations in Imperial history. Fulgrim observed with a grim smile as Ferrus Manus renewed his assault on the heart of the traitors' defensive lines. Amidst the chaos of battle, Fulgrim saw his brother as a figure of vengeance, his silver hands and eyes reflecting the carnage. Although Fulgrim briefly hoped Ferrus would pause to regroup with the Raven Guard and Salamanders, his brother's unyielding sense of honor drove him forward. The last of the Phoenix Guard stood ready, their golden halberds aimed at the advancing Iron Hands. Ferrus Manus and his Morlocks charged through the ruined defences, their black armour and burnished plates stained with enemy blood. Fulgrim's smile faltered as he recognised the depth of his brother's hatred, realising that their bond had been irreparably severed. The Iron Hands pressed on, their Terminators relentless in their advance, lightning crackling from their gauntlets and their eyes glowing with fury. The Phoenix Guard braced for the onslaught, responding with a fierce battle cry. The two forces clashed in a blinding display of energy and sound. The golden halberds of the Phoenix Guard and the lightning claws of the Iron Hands created a storm of light as they battled. Fulgrim stood above the fray, awaiting the arrival of the dark-armoured giant, who cut through the carnage with his own fury. Ferrus had long awaited this final confrontation, ever since Fulgrim had betrayed him. Only one of them would emerge from this final clash alive. Ferrus derided Fulgrim for his betrayal of the Emperor and alignment with the traitor Horus. He considered his brother to be delusional, believing that Horus had been defeated and that the addition of 4 more legions would soon crush any remaining rebellion. Unable to restrain himself any longer, Fulgrim shook his head with a sense of satisfaction, preparing to reveal the true nature of his brother's naivety. He pointed towards the northern edge of the Urgal depression, indicating that Ferrus and the other loyalists were the ones who were about to be undone. Ferrus turned and saw a force larger than the initial wave of attackers gathered in the landing zone, equipped and ready for battle. Dragging their wounded and dead behind them, Corax and Vulcan led their forces back to the drop site to regroup and allow their newly arrived brother Primarchs of the second wave a share of the glory in defeating Horus. Although they sent out voxes requesting medical aid and supplies, the line of Astartes atop the northern ridge remained eerily silent as the weary Raven Guard and Salamanders came within 100 meters of their allies. At that moment, Horus unveiled his treachery and sprung his deadly trap. From the black fortress where Horus had taken refuge, a single flare shot up, exploding into a hellish red light that illuminated the battlefield. The betrayal erupted from the barrels of 1,000 guns as the second wave of Astartes showed their true allegiance. Ferrus watched in shock as Fulgrim laughed at his brother's expression as their supposed allies turned their weapons on the Salamanders and Raven Guard, killing hundreds in the initial moments and even more in the ensuing seconds as a relentless barrage of bolter-fire and missiles cut through their ranks. Amidst the carnage below, the War Master's retreating forces turned their weapons on the enemy within their midst. Hundreds of sons of Horus and Deathguard fell upon the veteran companies of the Iron Hands. Despite their valiant efforts, the Iron Hands were overwhelmed and soon to be slaughtered. Ferrus Manus confronted Fulgrim, his rage reflecting the volcanic fury of his homeworld. The two Primarchs clashed, Ferrus wielding Fireblade and Fulgrim with Forgebreaker. Once symbols of their brotherhood, these weapons were now instruments of vengeance, their meeting producing a blazing burst of energy. They exchanged powerful blows, Ferrus slashing with his flaming blade, while Fulgrim's ebony-hafted hammer blocked each strike. Their combat was fueled by the deep-seated hatred of brothers turned enemies, their armor dented and scorched by their fury. In their intense struggle, the Primarchs inflicted severe wounds on each other. As Ferrus rose and staggered towards the wounded Fulgrim, he cried out and brought his flaming blade down towards his brother's neck. However, Fulgrim countered with the single-edged, demonically possessed sword from the Lair Temple, blocking the attack. Empowered by the chaos within the blade, Fulgrim's strength surged as he resisted Ferrus's assault. He managed to get to his feet and struck, his silver blade slicing deeply into Ferrus's breastplate. Ferrus cried out in agony, falling to his knees as Fireblade slipped from his grasp. As Fulgrim prepared to deliver the final blow, he hesitated, suddenly aware of the monstrous betrayal he had committed. In that fleeting moment, he recognized the grave mistake of wielding the sword from the Lair Temple and struggled to free himself from its malevolent influence. Despite his realization of the depth of his fall, Fulgrim knew he had gone too far to stop. As if in slow motion, he saw Ferrus reaching for his fallen sword, fingers closing around its grip. Fulgrim's blade seemed to act independently, and despite his efforts to hold back, the demonic sword cut through Ferrus's enhanced flesh and bone. Ferrus Manus fell, decapitated by his own brother's hand. Though victorious, Fulgrim was confronted with the painful truth of his actions as he looked at his brother's lifeless body. The reality of Ferrus's death and the betrayals leading up to this moment jolted him into clarity. Overwhelmed by grief, Fulgrim succumbed to a moment of weakness and, guided by the whispering of the demon, agreed to seek escape in oblivion. The greater demon was released from the sword and took complete control of Fulgrim's body, imprisoning the true Fulgrim's consciousness within a psychic prison, symbolically represented by a painting of the Primarch in La Fenice, the theatre of the Third Legion's flagship, the pride of the Emperor. After the traitors' victory at Istvan V, Fulgrim requested a private meeting with the War Master. Horus was pleased to see that Fulgrim had brought with him the gruesome trophy of Ferrus Manus's severed head as promised. Elated by this significant achievement, Horus intended to share his triumph with his fellow captains. However, Fulgrim revealed to Horus that he, not his brother, had been unable to keep his oath. This shocking admission made Horus realize that the being before him was not truly Fulgrim, but a doppelganger. Infuriated, Horus threatened to destroy this impostor, warning that he could crush him with ease. The false Fulgrim, however, had no intention of engaging in such a pointless combat. Noticing that this pretender was unarmed, Horus relaxed, understanding that the creature had no immediate plans for violence. The entity had come to pledge loyalty to Horus's cause and revealed itself as a warp creature, a humble servant of the Dark Prince Slanesh. The greater demon expressed its pleasure in having claimed Fulgrim's mortal form. Horus inquired about his brother's fate. The demon inside Fulgrim explained that the original Fulgrim was safe, trapped within the body now controlled by the greater demon, fully aware of everything but powerless to intervene. The demon took comfort in Fulgrim's suffering. Disturbed by this revelation, Horus said nothing in response. Recognizing the demon's potential as a powerful ally, Horus decided to keep it as a partner, realizing that he could not afford to lose the Third Legion at this critical moment. Nonetheless, Horus resolved to destroy the demon and rescue Fulgrim when the time was right, as no one deserved such a fate. However, Horus pondered what could possibly unmake a demon. He and the demon Fulgrim agreed to keep the true nature of the latter a secret. The demon had no desire for exposure, and Horus believed that revealing it would cause complications with the other Primarchs committed to the traitor cause. 4 days after the Dropsite massacre at Istvan V, Horus Lupercal convened a meeting of the Primarchs opposed to the Imperium aboard his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. The costs and destinies of the upcoming campaign were known to all, and the traitor fleets were already on the move. This was the first time they had gathered in full after the events on Istvan. 8 Primarchs were present, although only half were physically in the room. This included Fulgrim, Perturabo, Angron, and Lorgar Aurelian. The other 4 were represented by holographic projections. Conrad, Kurz, Mortarion, and Alfarius appeared as flickering grey hololithic images, while Magnus the Red projected a bright image of silver witchfire from afar. From the sorcerer's planet, where he was recovering from the burning of Prospero by Lehman Russ's space wolves. As soon as Lorgar took his seat, he fixated on his brother Fulgrim. Horus, increasingly frustrated with Fulgrim's disregard for planning and his lack of focus on the meeting, watched as Lorgar reached for the ornate Crozius mace on his back. As he drew the weapon, the presence of his closest kin felt a psychic chill. Lorgar accused the entity resembling his brother of being an impostor. Before anyone could react, Lorgar's Crozius struck the foe Fulgrim, sending him crashing into the back wall and collapsing to the ground. Lorgar declared that this pretender was not Fulgrim, and the other Primarchs present advanced with their weapons drawn. Despite Horus's attempts to calm Lorgar, even he was taken aback by the changes in his brother since Istvan V. Clutching his mace, Lorgar warned his brothers to keep their distance. When Horus tried once more to defuse the situation, Lorgar realized that Horus already knew the truth about Fulgrim. Horus assured his fellow Primarchs that he would handle the situation personally and dismissed everyone but Lorgar, the word-bearer. Primarch saw the truth that the creature in Fulgrim's form was a demon of chaos, with the real Fulgrim's soul trapped within. Lorgar could not fathom how this had occurred or why Horus was protecting such a dark secret. Horus explained that he had not orchestrated Fulgrim's fate, but was merely managing the aftermath. Lorgar was disturbed by the presence of another consciousness within Fulgrim's body. Annoyed, Horus questioned why this mattered to Lorgar, given their lack of closeness. Lorgar explained that this form of possession was a perversion of the natural order, unlike his own demon-possessed sons, the Galvorbak. He saw this as a weakness and corruption, contrary to what the Chaos Gods desired, willing followers, not soulless husks. Using his formidable psychic powers, Lorgar held the demon at bay. Horus warned that Lorgar would kill Fulgrim, but Lorgar retorted that it was not his brother, but an it that could be destroyed. Lorgar threatened to learn the demon's true name and banish it to the warp. The demon Fulgrim, helpless against Lorgar's psychic might, was restrained as Horus attempted to intervene, but was psychically compelled to withdraw. As Lorgar stormed away from the council chambers, Horus remarked on the changes in his brother since their encounter on Istvan V. Lorgar responded that everything had changed that night before leaving to reflect on what he viewed as utter corruption. The members of the Third Legion remained unaware that their revered leader was struggling ineffectually against the confines of his own mind. Only Captain Lucius of the 13th Company seemed to sense that something was amiss with Fulgrim, though he kept his observations to himself. The demon Fulgrim had noticed the growing warp influence on Lucius and had given him the silver demon blade, previously bound with a fragment of Lair's essence, now wielded as the more potent Kinnebrak anatheme, a gift from Horus. Despite the Lair Demonswood spirit being gone, it still held power that would enhance Lucius in the years to come. Following the conclave on Horus's flagship, the demon Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children Legion were instructed by the War Master to travel to Mars to support the Mechanicum in the impending civil war. However, the increasingly unpredictable Primarch chose to defy these orders and redirected his legion to attack a Mechanicum crystal mining world named Prismatica 5. Lord Commander Eidolon, struggling to cope with the Primarch's erratic behavior and the tension among the senior officers, questioned the new orders. This questioning proved to be a grave mistake on Eidolon's part. Unable to calm his enraged lord, Eidolon's attempt to justify himself only further inflamed Fulgrim's suspicions, leading the Primarch to believe that Eidolon was mocking him and plotting betrayal. In a swift and brutal reaction, Fulgrim drew the anatheme and killed Eidolon. He then held Eidolon's severed head over the barrels of victory wine, letting the blood mix with the drink, which was then shared among the senior members of the Third Legion. Lucius, who had long despised Eidolon, observed the event and noted it as another sign of Fulgrim's increasingly erratic behavior. Troubled by these changes, Lucius was inspired to investigate further, especially after receiving unsettling dreams about the painting of the Primarch that hung in La Fenice. This painting had been sealed off by the Phoenix Guard after the Maraviglia's corrupting influence had taken hold of the Legion. Concerned by his lord's erratic actions, Lucius scrutinized Fulgrim's every move. His concerns grew when he noticed a lack of brotherly camaraderie and disregard for Legion traditions from Fulgrim. Most troubling was Fulgrim's sudden decline in swordsmanship compared to Lucius's own superior skills. Lucius became convinced that his Primarch was an impostor. His suspicions were confirmed when he witnessed Fulgrim using powerful psychic abilities in combat against a Warhound-class Titan during the assault on Prismatica 5. The strange dreams persisted, leading Lucius to follow the threads of these visions. Defying standing orders, he ventured to La Fenice aboard the Emperor's Children flagship, the pride of the Emperor. Here, the influence of Slanesh, awakened by the Maravilla, had corrupted the Emperor's children. Lucius thoroughly investigated the ruined theatre, discovering the great portrait of Fulgrim above the stage's wreckage. Even in the dim light, the portrait's grandeur was evident. The golden frame enclosed a breathtaking depiction of Fulgrim in his purple and gold armour, standing before the gates of Heliopolis with the flaming wings of a phoenix behind him. The painting captured every detail of his majesty and beauty, embodying the ultimate warrior in a flawless portrayal. As Lucius stared into the painting's eyes, he saw a horror not created by mere mortal artistry. The agony in the eyes of the portrait was palpable, and Lucius realized that his Primarch was trapped within it, while the entity masquerading as Fulgrim was an impostor. Determined to free his true Primarch, Lucius secretly assembled the Brotherhood of the Phoenix, the exclusive warrior lodge of the Third Legion. This had to be done secretly, as the corrupted senior officers had become powerful, volatile, and self-obsessed. Many also harbored a disdain for Lucius. Through persuasive rhetoric, Lucius convinced his fellow warriors that their Primarch was not as he appeared. He appealed to their vanity, prompting them to capture the Primarch. The Brotherhood of the Phoenix then ambushed Fulgrim, and despite suffering casualties, managed to subdue him by rendering him unconscious. Fulgrim was then taken to the Apothecarion, where Chief Apothecary Fabius Bile, Lucius, Julius Caesoron, and Marius Virocian attempted to expel the demonic entity through a grueling process of excruciation. Fulgrim willingly endured the torment, speaking of his perceptions and the state of the galaxy as chaos grew. During the session, Lucius realized they had been misled. He saw that they had been deceived by Fulgrim. Lucius knelt and prostrated himself as Fulgrim easily broke free from his restraints. His fellow conspirators also bowed. Fulgrim, pleased with the lesson taught to his sons, did not punish them, revealing that he was not the demon-possessed shell they believed, but himself. Fulgrim explained that he had indeed been possessed by a demonic entity and trapped his spirit within the painting. He had used the time to master warpcraft and demon knowledge, eventually using this knowledge to swap places with the demon and imprison it within the portrait. The demon had likely been sending Lucius the dark dreams to seek release from its prison. Fulgrim's apparent decline in swordsmanship was a ploy to provoke Lucius into challenging him. His erratic behavior and neglect of Legion rituals were part of his quest for perfection, according to Slanesh's path. Fulgrim expressed his intention to explore sensual experiences to their fullest extent, not merely for power, but for the journey itself, which he wished his sons to undertake with him. He explained that the assault on Prismatica 5 was to acquire the crystal needed to build a new city of mirrors dedicated to exploring sensual pleasure and self-enlightenment. The next step for the Emperor's children was to meet with Perturabo and his Iron Warriors Legion. As Horus's rebellion continued, the Iron Warriors took the opportunity to humble their formidable adversaries, the Imperial Fists, on the remote world of Hydra Caudatus. This planet had recently come under Imperial compliance at the hands of the Sons of Dawn. After their victory, Perturabo received word that Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children Legion sought a meeting with him to discuss a matter of great significance. Although the Phoenician had yet to disclose the exact nature of his visit, he assured Perturabo that it would be wondrous. Perturabo, familiar with his brother's penchant for the dramatic, which had only intensified since the Third Legion aligned with the War Master, was prepared for a grand revelation. While Perturabo had no close bonds with his fellow Primarchs, his and Fulgrim's shared pursuit of perfection, though approached differently, had fostered a mutual respect and allowed for communication as trusted comrades in arms. Perturabo speculated that Fulgrim's visit was related to the upcoming campaign against Mars. The War Master required the Martian front to be secured before moving on Terra, and Perturabo surmised that Fulgrim's purpose was to enlist the Iron Warriors' assistance in breaching the Mechanicum's forged cities. Anticipating further instructions, Perturabo decided to accommodate his brother's visit and listen to what he had to say. While preparing for the forthcoming campaign, Perturabo was informed that the Emperor's children had arrived unannounced on Hydra Caudatus. Over 300 dropcraft had landed outside the valley where the Iron Warriors were encamped. In response, the 4th Legion quickly assembled to greet the 3rd Legion with an impressive reception. Thousands of Thracitai Imperial Army troops were lined up, and 200 grand battalions of Iron Warriors, totaling 50,000 warriors in their distinctive amber dust-burnished warplate, stood ready. Such a display of power and splendor had not been seen since the devastation wrought on the black sands of Istvan V. Despite the grandeur, Perturabo and his senior officers were struck by the extravagant display of noise, color, and spectacle that emerged from the 3rd Legion's landing site. The Emperor's children had become unrecognizable from the honorable warriors they once were, and Perturabo was puzzled by the purpose of the grotesque transformations and deprivations their warriors now displayed. Fulgrim met Perturabo in the private inner chamber of his command bunker, presenting an irresistible offer, a means to fulfill Perturabo's every desire perfectly, ensuring that nothing would ever disappoint or fall short of his highest expectations. Fulgrim proposed a grand alliance for a momentous quest that could potentially sway the balance of the War Master's rebellion. Though Perturabo was wary of his brother's motives, he saw the potential for mutual understanding through this shared endeavor. Fulgrim then disclosed their mission, to journey to the warp storm that had haunted Perturabo's dreams throughout his life. Hidden within the storm was an ancient and forbidden Xenos weapon known as the Angel Exterminatus. This weapon, so powerful that even the stars sought to prevent its escape, lay buried in its own tomb, awaiting retrieval. Unbeknownst to both the Emperor's children and the Iron Warriors, a ragtag band of loyalist Astartes was in pursuit, determined to halt the traitor's advance at any cost. These loyalist space marines, survivors of the drop site massacre on Istvan V, had emerged from the deadly Urgal depression and managed to escape the Istvan system aboard an Iron Hands strike cruiser named the Sisypheum. The crew of the Sisypheum primarily comprised Iron Hands Astartes and their mortal serfs, but also included surviving salamanders and a single Raven Guard Astartes. Their escape from Istvan had been a harrowing sequence of frantic maneuvers under enemy fire and stealthy navigations through the traitor's orbital blockade, culminating in a desperate dash to the Gravipause, the safe distance required for a successful warp jump. Though the Sisypheum had evaded the trap, it did so at great cost. In the months that followed, the Sisypheum launched a series of hit-and-run attacks against traitor forces along the northern edges of the galaxy, acting like a solitary predator in a murky sea. Their targets included traitor scout craft, cartography vessels, and slow-moving supply hulks, brimming with mortal troops, ammunition, and weaponry. The Sisypheum aimed to disrupt and harass, establishing contact with other scattered loyalist groups that had also escaped the massacre, and devising a coordinated strategy. With the 10th Legion too fragmented to engage in conventional battles, its surviving leaders adapted their approach, becoming the persistent thorns in the side of the traitor forces, distracting them from their main objectives. At Kavor Sata, Iron Hand, Sabak Wayland, and the sole Raven Guard survivor, Nikona Sharokin, captured an unlingual cipher host, one of the so-called Kryptos, a hybrid monstrosity from the Dark Mechanicum that had made the traitors' coded communications nearly unbreakable. With this Kryptos, the loyalist commanders finally gained access to the traitors' encrypted messages. Acting on this newfound intelligence, Ulrach Branthan, captain of the Sisypheum, directed the ship on a complex journey to Hydra Caudatus, where the traitor Primarchs were expected to gather, as indicated by the decrypted communications. Discovering Fulgrim's plan to enter the Eye of Terror and retrieve the Angel Exterminatus, the Sisypheum crew, guided by a mysterious elder, set course for the Warp Rift with the aim of thwarting the traitor's acquisition of the enigmatic Xenos weapon. The joint fleet of Iron Warriors and Emperor's children was bound for the long-lost elder world of Idris, a planet once favoured by the elder goddess Liliath. Idris was one of the mythical crone worlds that once lay at the core of the Elder Empire, before it was obliterated by the creation of the Eye of Terror, following the emergence of the Chaos god Slaanesh. This world was situated at the centre of the Eye of Terror, somehow maintaining its position amidst the gravitational chaos of a supermassive black hole at the core of the warp storm. From this epicentre, the galaxy expelled unnatural matter into the void, creating a dark gateway to an unknown destination and an immensely powerful singularity whose gravity devoured light, matter, space, and time. The Primarch's ultimate objective lay within their grasp: the sepulchre of Isha's doom, located at the heart of the citadel of Amon-Nishak Kalis. This citadel stood at the entrance to the prison tomb of the Angel Exterminatus. Before launching a full-scale assault, the Iron Warriors initiated a preliminary orbital bombardment around the citadel, a standard procedure when preparing to attack a potentially hostile environment. A cone of fire scorched the surface of Idris, flattening and incinerating structures that had remained untouched for tens of thousands of years in mere moments. The citadel of Amon-Nishak Kalis, surrounded by a barren ring of pulverized earth, stood isolated from the planet's other structures by a raging firestorm of planet-shattering force. Following the bombardment, a multitude of thunderhawks, stormbirds, warhawks, and heavy planetary landers descended from the crowded embarkation decks. Bulk tenders unloaded thousands of troop carriers, armor lifters, and supply barges. Majestic, gravity-cushioned mass landers moved slowly as two titans from the Legio Mortis took to the field. This was merely the first wave of the invasion, with another 8 waves to follow before the full martial might of 2 Space Marine legions and their auxiliary Imperial Army forces reached the planet. The traitors' assault commenced 5 hours later, despite the fortifications still being incomplete. For all practical purposes, the path to the citadel of Amon-Nishak Kalis was undefended and unopposed. Ever wary of the lack of defences, Perturabo had his Iron Warriors entrenched in a perfect formation outside the walls, creating a layered barbican to safeguard the traitor legion's line of retreat. Fulgrim's forces split into various warbands, each led by a captain, although their elaborate armour often made it difficult to distinguish their ranks. Leaving behind the fortified bridgehead, Perturabo led his Iron Warriors and the Emperor's children into the heart of Amon-Nishak Kalis. The sepulchre of Isha's doom was an immense palace adorned with morn towers and ivory-domed roofs. As the traitor forces advanced towards the sepulchre, they were silently and unknowingly observed by the loyalist Astartes aboard the Sisypheum. Despite being outnumbered significantly, the small loyalist force devised a plan to find an alternative entry into the massive sepulchre. As the 2 Primarchs approached their goal, Fulgrim urged his stern brother with impatient insistence not to delay. Perturabo scrutinized Fulgrim and his assembled host. His brother was covered in sweat, but not of the usual kind. Fulgrim was sweating light. Though faint, Perturabo's enhanced vision revealed the radiance emanating from his brother, suggesting that Fulgrim was aware of it. His armour strained against his body, and his appearance was drawn and weary, as though he was only standing through sheer willpower. Fulgrim's captains also exhibited a similar deathly radiance, which was unsettling. Perturabo, distrusting Fulgrim and anticipating betrayal, pressed on determinedly. As they neared the sepulchre's heart, the energy at the core of Idris recoiled in recognition of the followers of Slaanesh, known to the Eldar as She Who Thirsts, awakening its ancient guardians. Thousands of crystalline statues, once immobile, began to move with a stiff mechanical gait. The gems within their heads glowed with vibrant colours, making their previously delicate forms appear much sturdier. These wraith-like elder constructs, the dead of Idris, emerged in their thousands, attacking the traitor forces both outside and within the citadel. As Perturabo fought for his life, Fulgrim vanished amid the chaos. Realizing Fulgrim's location, Perturabo followed the green glow emanating from the chamber's center. He understood that this was no ordinary energy, but the concentrated essence of all who had died there. Perturabo descended an endless spiral toward a point of light that grew no brighter, despite his descent. The journey seemed interminable, until it finally ended. Fulgrim stood at the start of a slender bridge, extending into the center of an enormous spherical chamber. The chamber, a hollow world, had its core a colossal void with a blindingly bright sun at its heart. Perturabo confronted his brother, discovering there was no angel exterminatus. Fulgrim revealed that he himself was to be the angel exterminatus. Perturabo criticized Fulgrim's delusions of grandeur but remained unmoved. As Perturabo advanced towards him with Forgebreaker in hand, Fulgrim uttered a single word that shattered Perturabo's mind, causing him to fall to one knee. Fulgrim then explained the reason behind Perturabo's draining energy. Upon arriving at Hydrocaudatus, Fulgrim had gifted Perturabo a cloak of the softest ermine, trimmed with foxbat fur and embroidered with spirals in the golden ratio. A chrome steel skull with a large gemstone set in its forehead fastened the cloak. This gem, initially black, had turned solid gold and pulsed with its own heartbeat as they journeyed toward the Eye of Terror. This gem, known as the Maugetar Stone or the Harvester, had been slowly draining Perturabo's strength and life force. With Perturabo's sacrifice, Fulgrim aimed to achieve apotheosis. As the two Primarchs ascended within the shaft of light, they emerged into the chaos at the heart of the sepulchre. The Primarch of the Emperor's children threw his brother aside, sending Perturabo into a languid arc that ended with a jarring impact against the edge of the shaft. Blood trailed through the air from Perturabo's chest, painting a streak of red. The Lord of Iron lay motionless, his body shattered and lifeless. All the Astartes in the chamber were drawn to the Primarch, recognizing the gravity of the situation. The Phoenician, no longer the same being who had descended to the planet, now hovered above the shaft, which had ceased its turbulent green flow and instead emitted a dim, fading light. Fulgrim's armor glowed with an intense vitality, as if it contained the brilliance of 1,000 suns struggling to break free. His dark, lifeless eyes were black voids, portals to experiences and sensations that only the most deranged or desperate could dream of. As Fulgrim neared the fulfillment of his ultimate desire, Perturabo, having regained some strength, rose to his feet, the Maugetar stone in hand. He advanced towards Fulgrim, holding the stone over the shaft. Perturabo searched his brother's face for any sign of remorse, any indication of regret for the murderous plot. He found nothing, and his heart broke as he realized that the Fulgrim he once knew was gone forever. He had never believed anyone could fall so far as to be beyond redemption. Perturabo knew that Fulgrim no longer sought to be an angel but wished to become a god. He told Fulgrim that mankind had outgrown such beings long ago. Disgusted by his brother's ambitions, Perturabo hurled the Maugetar stone into the depths of the shaft. In response, a sudden barrage of bolter fire erupted, knocking several Emperor's children Astartes to the ground. Black-armoured space marines, marked with a mailed fist on their shoulder guards, charged into the fray. These were the Iron Hands of the 10th Legion. The battle soon intensified, with loyalists and traitors clashing within the vast chamber. The battle closed in around the two Primarchs, Perturabo kneeling and Fulgrim floating in the air, seemingly bound to his brother by unbreakable ties. The Iron Hands fought fiercely against the Emperor's children and Iron Warriors, exchanging streams of fire. During the chaos, a Raven Guard named Sharokin retrieved the Maugetar stone. Instinctively, he knew it needed to be destroyed. He took a bolter from a fallen Emperor's children Astartes, aimed at the stone, and fired. The release of Perturabo's life force from the chaotic relic rejuvenated him. Fulgrim's body responded with a sympathetic reaction, as the Maugatar stone held more than just Perturabo's stolen strength. It contained their combined essences, a power greater than the sum of its parts, enabling a transformation that required the life force of two Primarchs. Fulgrim's armor burned away like golden dust, leaving his swollen, naked form ablaze with intense heat. Spectral flames of pink and purple licked his body, a hungry fire waiting to consume him if his focus wavered. As Perturabo stood upright, lifting Forgebreaker onto his shoulder, Fulgrim saw his death in Perturabo's eyes and grinned, knowing his brother was compelled to do it. Perturabo swung the mighty hammer in a wide arc, splitting Fulgrim's body open. The deed was done. Fulgrim's body exploded upon the impact of Perturabo's warhammer, releasing a blinding light that filled the chamber. The explosion was like the birth scream of a new sun, a radiant rebirth in fire. The light was so intense it could blind or drive observers mad. Through slitted fingers and shimmering reflections, the survivors witnessed a magnificent and terrible spectacle, a death and a rebirth combined. A figure floated amidst the light, and Perturabo could hardly believe what he saw. Fulgrim, naked and perfect as the day he was first conceived by the Emperor, was reborn. His body, once perfect, became fluid and malleable, reshaping under an invisible sculptor's touch. His legs extended, merging into a serpent-like tail covered in scales and chitinous armor. Perturabo, stepping towards this being born from his brother's death, despaired at the sight of his transformed sibling. Perturabo had destroyed Fulgrim's mortal shell. What remained was an immaterial avatar of light, energy, and desire, a creature birthing itself through sheer will. Fulgrim's face showed a mask of rapturous agony, suffering for the pleasure it promised. Obsidian horns sprouted from his brow, curling back over his skull, leaving his face as pristine as a child's. Fulgrim ascended into chaos, becoming a demon prince, a prince of the Neverborn and champion of Slaanesh. As the first traitor Primarch to achieve demonic apotheosis, he left his brother with a cryptic message that they would meet again and renew their bonds. Raising his hands, a curtain of light enveloped him and his Emperor's children, Chaos Space Marines, and they vanished in a burst of arcane teleportation energy. With the Emperor's children gone, the crone world of Idris began to disintegrate. The force that had sustained it was gone, and the planet was doomed to be consumed by the supermassive black hole at the eye of Terra's heart. The remaining Iron Hands gathered their wounded and retreated from the growing fissures and ruptures in the planet's surface. They looked upon Perturabo with hatred, but chose to escape the doomed world, knowing they could not survive a confrontation with the Lord of Iron. Perturabo allowed their departure before leading his warriors out of the crumbling citadel. Aboard his flagship, the Iron Blood, Perturabo watched Idris's final moments. The Iron Blood struggled to break orbit as the Eye of Terror's force reasserted its grip on reality. Many smaller vessels in the Iron Warrior's fleet had already been pulled into the black hole's embrace, consumed by its powerful energies. Only the capital ships had engines powerful enough to resist, but they could only delay the inevitable. Perturabo's triarchs awaited his orders, and he declared that they would advance into the black hole, refusing to retreat. Though his senior commanders deemed it suicide, Perturabo reminded them that Fulgrim had promised they would meet again. The Iron Warriors were not meant to perish in the Eye, and the only way forward was through it. His men obeyed his orders, and the Iron Warriors' fleet plunged deep into the heart of Terra. In the 7 years following the massacre on Istvan V, Horus's rebellion spread throughout the galaxy, 23 engulfing the Imperium in the flames of the catastrophic civil war known as the Horus Heresy. By the time the final Battle of Terra commenced, the Emperor's children had deteriorated into mere shadows of their former glory, utterly consumed by the desires of Slaanesh and devoid of any remaining decency. While the other traitor legions attacked the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's children unleashed their frenzy upon Terra's innocent civilians, engaging in a nightmarish spree of rape, terror, and mutilation that barely quenched their insatiable, Slaanesh-driven craving for hedonistic pleasure, pain, and sensation. Billions of Terrans were subjected to experimentation, used as raw material to create ever more potent stimulants, or slaughtered outright to provide fleeting satisfaction through brutal murder. The details of the Emperor's children's actions after their defeat at the Siege of Terra are largely obscured from imperial scholars for obvious reasons. After Horus's defeat aboard his battle barge, the Vengeful Spirit, the Emperor's children left a trail of desolated worlds as they fled with the other traitor legions into the Eye of Terror. As their supply of slaves dwindled from relentless abuse, the remnants of the Third Legion began raiding other traitor legions for fresh victims to satisfy their unending perversions. Eventually, they were overwhelmed by their outraged allies in a series of brutal conflicts known as the Legion Wars, which shattered the traitor legion's cohesion following Horus's death. In these conflicts, the unity of the Emperor's children was destroyed, fragmenting them into numerous small competing warbands. Due to the heavy losses sustained on Terra and immediately afterward, Emperor's children warbands are now rare in the 41st millennium. This scarcity is beneficial for the galaxy, as the Emperor's children are notorious for their brutal treatment of prisoners. There may be no worse fate than falling into the hands of these superhuman Slaaneshi zealots, perhaps only rivaled by the torments inflicted by the Drukhari. The fate of the Primarch Fulgrim remains one of the greatest mysteries. Having achieved apotheosis during the heresy, he became a demon Primarch, his mortal form transformed into a serpentine shape, with 4 arms and wings resembling those of the layer Xenos that Fulgrim and his legion had previously exterminated. Bored with the mundane excesses of his legion after the Horus heresy, Fulgrim, now a demon prince of Slaanesh, isolated himself on a Slaaneshi demon world in the Eye of Terror, which he renamed Kallax after his lost homeworld, Chemos. Over Terran centuries, he transformed Kallax to mirror Chemos and recreated the conditions of his arrival. Fulgrim spends much of his time reliving the old battles that unified his homeworld, repeating them with different strategies in search of a flawless victory to rewrite his past. At times, he even allows his enemies to win. To this day, many scattered warbands of the Emperor's children and agents of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus seek the location of this world. Only a few have managed to find it, sometimes by invitation from its corrupt master, sometimes not. After the Horus heresy, Fulgrim was last seen in real space, battling Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines. During their epic duel at the Battle of Thessaly, in the year 121st of the 31st millennium, Fulgrim, using his warp-enhanced senses to exploit a scar left by Corferon's Athame blade, managed to fatally wound Guilliman with a poisoned blade. Guilliman was placed in a stasis field and transported to the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge, to the Temple of Correction within their fortress monastery complex. There he became a focal point for the devotion of countless generations of Imperial pilgrims until his resurrection in the year 999 of the 41st millennium, while Fulgrim retreated into the warp. Thousands of Terran years after the Istvan III atrocity, it had become a shattered, dead world. Yet a single loyalist Astartes, betrayed by Horus, still survived in a collapsed hangar deep beneath the Precentor's palace. Ancient Rillinor, a venerable dreadnought, and the Ancient of Rites of the Emperor's Children Legion. Severely wounded during the final days of the battle against his traitor brethren, Rillinor had taken refuge in the collapsed hangar upon discovering an unexploded virus bomb. Driven to madness by the passage of time, the dreadnought used the remnants of the traitor Emperor's Children's sonic weapons to create an interstellar beacon designed to lure his former Primarch, Fulgrim, back to Istvan III in a bid to kill him. Although the beacon also attracted a group of curious Thousand Sons heretic Astartes from the planet of the sorcerers, it ultimately succeeded in drawing Fulgrim back to the desolate world. However, Fulgrim was no longer merely a Primarch. He had become a serpentine demon prince of Slaanesh, embodying malice and pride. Rillinor detonated the bomb when the overconfident demon Primarch emerged from his organic remains, now separated from his cybernetic sarcophagus. One of the Thousand Sons Astartes, a member of the Raptora cult, used a potent Kine shield to contain the explosion, but Vistario, another sorcerer, disgusted by Fulgrim's transformation, killed his companion and allowed the psychic shield to fall. Once more, Istvan III was consumed by flames. The Life-Eater virus completed its devastating work more swiftly on Istvan III's second death. Yet, not long afterward, a shadow emerged from the Undercity, a serpentine form of cinders held together by demonic energy. Even the ancient viral toxins could not undo what the darkest powers of the warp had resurrected. Fulgrim's form began to reshape itself, though his soul remained shattered. The denial of his once greatness inflicted a profound wound. This simple truth was ancient Rillenor's final triumph. Before the start of the 41st millennium, Bile succeeded in cloning one of the Primarchs, specifically Fulgrim. This clone, unlike previous attempts, was an exact replica of Fulgrim as he was before his corruption by Slaanesh. The reason for this untainted clone remained a mystery even to Bile. The new incarnation of Fulgrim aged to maturity rapidly, as originally intended for Primarchs, and retained the genetic memories of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. This Fulgrim expressed deep regret for his actions during those conflicts and his eventual fall to chaos, vowing to atone for his sins, including the murder of Ferrus Manus and his betrayal of the Emperor. However, before he could act on his vows, Bile betrayed him to Necron overlord Trazyn the Infinite, who added the resurrected Primarch to his collection of historical figures on his tomb world of Solemnus. Bile feared that despite the cloned Fulgrim's passionate denouncements of his demonic counterpart's actions, this Fulgrim might end up repeating the same mistakes. Before his fall, Fulgrim was unique among the Primarchs for his belief that the Great Crusade aimed to create a new interstellar civilization dedicated to the pursuit of art, music, literature, and drama. As an artist and masterful sculptor, Fulgrim created statues of his legion's first captains, but never felt his work achieved true greatness. Fulgrim's quest for perfection extended to every aspect of life, a trait his legion emulated. He believed humanity represented the epitome of sentient life, and that the Emperor was the perfect human to be revered and emulated. Fulgrim's dedication to humanity's perfection made him hostile to anything challenging this belief, such as his refusal to allow the Lair to continue ruling their world as a protectorate of the Imperium. Fulgrim's desire for perfection stemmed from his insecurities. He secretly felt something was fundamentally wrong with his creation, a belief he passed on to his Astartes, which made him susceptible to manipulation. This flaw was exploited by Fabius Bile, who began genetic enhancements that led to the mutations pleasing to Slaanesh. Fulgrim's closest relationships included the Iron Hands Primarch Ferrus Manus and Horus, with whom he fought during the early rebuilding years of his legion. The Phoenix Guard, the elite unit of Emperor's Children's Space Marines, served as Fulgrim's bodyguard throughout the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. They accompanied him even on Imperial Navy starships. During the campaign to conquer the Xenos world of Lairan, the Phoenix Guard played a role in the extermination of the Lair species. The entire unit was killed on Tarsus after Fulgrim, influenced by chaos and angered by Eldar Farseer. Eldred Ulthran's warnings about Horus's corruption attacked the Farseer and his troops from Ulthwi Craftworld. A new Phoenix Guard was formed and accompanied Fulgrim during his pivotal moments, including his fall to chaos and his attempt to recruit Ferrus Manus to the traitor's cause, where they succeeded in killing Ferrus's Morlock Terminators. Although the Phoenix Guard served Fulgrim through the Battle of Terror, it is unknown whether the unit still exists and serves as the Demon Prince's bodyguards on his demon world.